Okay, so we've established that in real life, data can be crazy, complex. Outside of the classroom, things aren't as nice as we'd like them to be. So we've established that fact. But now where do we start to kind of wrap our heads around how we represent complex data using MySQL? And the answer is we're going to start by talking about the relationship basics. So I know it sounds like, marriage counseling 101 or something, but this is not, it's not that. This is about the different ways that data can be related. So if we have two tables or two entities, things like orders and customers, students and teachers, movies and reviews and users, how are they related? And there's a couple different ways. There's kind of these big, broad categories we can break relationships down into. And the terms that I'm going to use that you'll occasionally come across are three. There's the first one, which is a one-to-one relationship. And I'm just going to go through all of them first before we talk about what they mean and talk about examples. So a one-to-one relationship, a one-to-many relationship, and then a many-to-many relationship. So the reality is that one-to-one relationships aren't actually that common, but perhaps another example, or one that I've recently used, is it had a customers table that had the basic information for a customer. So things like their username and their password, although again, you don't actually store the password directly, but username and password and email, and like registration date. And then there was a separate table where we stored all these details about a customer. So rather than storing 10 or 20 extra columns on the basic customer table, we decided to split it up based off of what was most commonly needed in the app we were building. And most commonly, all we needed was the username and the password and the email. But there was a whole bunch of other information that we were storing, so we created a customer details table. And that's a one-to-one relationship. One customer has their own row, one row in the customer details table. And one customer details row is associated with one customer. So Colt Steel has a Colt Steel customer details, but there's no other user or customer that could be associated with it because it's a one-to-one relationship. Anyways, like I said, it's not the most common. What is the most common is actually a one-to-many relationship. And that's what we'll spend the most time on in this course because, like I said, it's really common. So here's an example. The relationship between books and reviews. One book can have thousands of reviews, right? Let's say Into Thin Air by Jon Krakauer could have probably tens of thousands of reviews by this point. It's been out for a while. It's pretty popular. But those reviews belong to that book exclusively, to one book. So the relationship is books have many reviews, but reviews belong to one book. So it's a one-to-many. So that's a really common classic example. Reviews or ratings and books or some entity. Okay, so then the next thing that we'll discuss here is a many-to-many relationship. And many-to-many is still relatively common, and the way that it works, it's what it sounds like. We have two entities, in this case, books and authors. And you could kind of speak through it. You could say, okay, books can have many authors. That's true. We could have two authors writing a book together, and those authors can have many books. There's no rule that says authors can only write one book. J.K. Rowling, however you say it, has 10 plus books. So it's a two-way, a many-to-many relationship. So hopefully you can see the difference there. Reviews and books. Reviews belong to one book. They're associated only with one book, whatever the book title is for that review. It can't also be the same review associated for another book. So that part of the relationship is one, right? And then we have the books to reviews, which is a many relationship. Books have many reviews. This is different because books can have multiple authors and authors can belong to multiple books, or authors can have multiple books. And the way that we represent this is actually a little more complex. So we're going to come back to it. We're going to start off in this section by talking about the most common relationship and how we represent that, which is the one-to-many relationship. So that's coming up next.